Great. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the EBA webinar podcast series. My name is Aaron Smith. I'm the CEO of EBA, joined by Nancy Bakeman, our Executive Vice President. And our guest today is Christopher Salem. Chris is from Danbury, Connecticut. Some of you saw him speak at EBA Summit in 2023. And Chris is back to talk to us again. He runs a business called Sustainable Success Coaching and Consulting. Put your comments in the Q&A section or the chat section. We'll make sure to answer any questions as we go through today's presentation. And as always, this can be found in recording on the EBA Learning Management System at eba.org or on our Better Homes, Better Future podcast. Chris, welcome back. Great to see you again.
Thank you, Aaron. I appreciate it. Great to see both you and Nancy, and thank you for having me back. And welcome, everybody. Hope everyone is having a great week. And I'm looking forward to serving you here today on the topic trusted, booked, and referred. And what that means is we're going to talk about today, as builders, what can we be doing forward to better understand and relate to the audience that we serve? Perhaps some of you serve a certain type of clientele. Some of you may not. Maybe it might be a little bit more diverse. That being said, I'm going to share some things that maybe you've heard of, maybe perhaps that you haven't, or things that you've heard of that you haven't seen presented in this type of way. But these are going to be things that are going to allow you now to kind of be more compelling and connect at a deeper level with your audience based on one of the most important attributes that you can possibly do so. And that is what is called trust. Because without trust, many times we're not going to be able to move forward in converting and closing more jobs, in this case, developing more projects, homes, whatever that may look like. As Aaron mentioned in the chat box, we're going to be using the chat box. I'm going to be occasionally asking a question to everyone on here. You can feel free to put what you like in the chat box. That way we can, see where you are and how that's going to relate to what we're going to share in the presentation today. So how many of you would say that right now on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the highest, 1 being the lowest, where would you rank yourself when it comes to marketing? Now, marketing itself, that can include PR if you like, marketing and how it relates to the audience you serve. Where would you right now rank yourself? Don't project, just be honest. Where would you rank yourself? 10 being the highest, 1 being the lowest, anywhere in between. What would that look like? Let's see if we get anybody in the chat box. We have a 6, 7. That's actually a joke, by the way.
It is a joke.
If you watch TikTok, I've seen that. 7. So we got a 7. So this is great. So we have the key here is we can all improve, whether if it's marketing, because when it comes down to it's about the communication. Many times we assume and speculate that we are communicating at a high level through our marketing, maybe our PR to our audience, when in reality that may not be the case. So we're going to be learning some of that stuff today. So let's take a look at what this looks like. So one of the things I want to, just really establish how we're going to kick off is we have to be able to now go from guessing to knowing. What that means is we have to truly know our audience. And if we truly know our audience, the people that we serve, maybe it's a certain demographic, it's a certain type of buyer in terms of homes, whatever that may be, or if you're developing a group of, like HOA communities, whatever that may look like. But nonetheless, we want to make sure that again, that is being built on a foundation of trust. Because if you don't have trust, many people are unlikely to move forward, or they delay the process in saying yes to move forward. So it's going to be very important that as we talk about today, that we want to use trust as the focus in everything we do, right down to the people that work for us, our team, our alliance partners, to people who supply us materials and equipment, whatever that may look like, and of course the end user, the customer itself. Because without that trust, we can't really build a stronger connection to move forward. So let's take a look at where this is going to be coming from, what this is going to mean to you. After we go through today's session, you're going to really better understand where your messaging is and where it can improve and get better. And by repositioning your message, that is what we call a value proposition message, which is necessary for brand awareness and also moving your brand to the next level. How that can be better aligned to what is the true challenge or the common challenge that your audience has that can be better, and what is the actual results they desire and don't have now. Again, the mistake that a lot of businesses make, not only in construction, but across all industries, is we assume and speculate what the challenge is for our customers. We assume and speculate what are the results they seek and don't have. And those are the things where we think we know can actually work against us. So by knowing, which we're going to cover, how you can now better know how that's going to reframe or reposition your messaging across all the platforms that your audience may interact and engage with, that's going to lower the amount of touch points or reduce the number of touch points on the buyer's journey for them to say yes to move forward. We'll talk about, how that plays an important part in streamlining your sales process, which now will lead to more qualified leads that will then, create better experiences in the long run. And when you have a happy, fulfilled client that has had a great experience, what are they most likely going to do? They're going to refer you. And that's where we want to be able to cover what that process is like and how you can now turn, your business and increase not only more projects, more revenue, but even more important from this, how we can now create better net profit margin to increase your business valuation and thus increase your connection with your audience at a much higher level. So just a little background on where this is coming from. As Aaron and Nancy mentioned, I did speak at the EEBA event in Salt Lake City back in 2023 on a slightly different topic. But just to give you some context around this, I've been involved in the area of marketing and sales now for pretty much most of my career, for 35 years. I've worked with major event companies and media companies, and really understanding the people, not only just what's important to people, but right down to how they make decisions based on personality types, generational types, cultural and ethnic types. So I'm going to be sharing a lot of insights from my personal experience and what I've done for clients across many different industries, which includes construction, because I've worked with a lot of commercial construction organizations in this particular area, and how we can better understand and have the tools and inside resources that will help us to create better message, a better connection, and build more trust with our audience. So before we start, let's take a look at, if we're going to make something better, it would be safe to say that we got to know our challenges. Because if we go into something to make something better, if we're not really familiar with our challenge, then guess what? How are we going to turn that challenge into an opportunity? And then how are we going to turn that opportunity into a result? So let's talk a little bit about what would be some of the challenges that you have from a marketing, PR, or it can be any type of connection that you have with your core audience. What would that look like? Now, these are some examples of what this could be as a whole that you see here on the screen, but I'd like to hear from the audience. What would that look like if you could put that in the chat box? What would be some of the common challenges that you have in connecting and building trust with your audience through marketing, PR, sales, or any other type of connection? What would that look like? Messaging not being heard and felt by the target audience. Yes, so it's not landing or connecting. Very common, which is, I think, a pain point that we could all feel. Excellent, thank you. I think it comes before that even. It's finding the right audience. Oh, absolutely. You got to know your audience first, and we're going to cover that. Thank you for sharing that, because a lot of times we assume what we know. We think we know our audience when we don't know our audience. That is the first step. Absolutely. Right now, we're seeing a stall in buyers moving forward. Yeah, I mean, we're in some uncertain times right now where a lot of people are slow to pull the trigger for whatever reason. A lot of the things that are outside of our control right now with tariffs and uncertainty with their income because maybe they were laid off or their business is slow, whatever that may be. Yeah. Yep. Let's see if I think somebody else is typing. I just want to make sure I include what they say. Let's see what else we have coming in. Right. So while that person's typing, I see that there we go. Out of 100 homes on the MLS, new construction, only 12 were built. Wow. So yeah. So there, I know overall new construction is still very slow, just due to the fact, what we came out of with COVID and obviously with the interest rates being higher and supply chains being disrupted and costs and so on. So the thing is that there is a lot of uncertainty. There are a lot of things outside of our control, right? We can't control other people and situations. That would be impossible to do. But what we can control is you personally. So your team, your business overall, if you can control what you can control, and that's yourself with each other, then what can we be doing differently, even with the control we can control, to now build more trust and better connections with our audience? So let's take a look at that. So you can see here, these are some common challenges. And while this is in your industry, it's also could be said, this could apply to other industries as well. Like, leads that where people ghost you or stall, they call you, you give them you do a proposal for them, you quote them on a project, and then they go missing in action. I mean, I even seen that in my business, being a consultant and coach, especially this year. It just seems to be whatever, people just feeling the pain from wherever that's coming from in with their economic situation. But nonetheless, we can't control that. So let's work with what we can control, and that is you, in terms of how you relate, understand, and relate to them, connecting better with them, building that rapport and trust. So let's take a look at, the opportunity. So the opportunity is that in any challenge, no matter what that challenge is, those challenges that you all brought up here in the chat box, the ones that were listed on the previous slide, if we're looking to create an opportunity or see an opportunity to turn into a result, just know that it can't happen without a challenge. And that doesn't mean just one challenge. It can be more than one challenge. But nonetheless, so we got to first see the challenge or challenges as an opportunity. We have to embrace it. Because if we're going to be able to move the ball forward, we have to acknowledge that. We can't resist. We can't go around it. We can't gossip and complain about it, no matter how frustrating it is. We have to be able to see it for what it is, not what we think it should be. So I'll say that again. We have to be able to see it for what it is, not what we think it should be. So this way, we have more clarity. And when there's more clarity, we're more likely to now listen better, not only with our ears to what our audience is saying to us, almost like we're reading in between the lines, like a lawyer does, but even listening with our eyes. Because many times people can say things and then their behavior, their attitude, their action, their emotions can contradict what they said. So that's a big thing. So a lot of times that could be body language, that could be tone of voice, that can be their lack of eye contact if you're face to face with them. So these are the things that we have to be mindful of, that are they in alignment? So this way we can know if we're truly moving the ball forward, not assuming we are. So the key is we got to start shifting the way we look at things, about not showing what you can do for them. Okay. And that's going to be important when you've established rapport and trust to a level where they've given you permission to do that. But it's first got to be about showing that you understand them, especially during these uncertain times, planting those seeds and so on. So let's take a look at, when we can now embrace that type of mindset shift. In this case, that would be a mindset shift to now make a marketing shift. Let's take a look at how this would impact what we're looking at. So we got to create a trust formula. And the thing about trust is that, would it be safe to say that there could be a lot of other businesses in your industry that perhaps have not given the consumer or your audience, because maybe perhaps it's your audience too, that feeling that they could trust the industry. Just maybe to say that, I'm just speaking for the trades itself. Would it be safe to say that could be the case? Maybe they were burned, maybe that someone said they were going to, show up to do something and they didn't do it. The project didn't start on time, and this is their experience. And now, they just assume and speculate that I'm probably going to get more of the same. Would it be safe to say that could be somebody's perception of somebody that's looking for a new construction, new build, or if they're looking to revamp an existing structure? Would it be safe to say that could be the case?
Yes.
Yes. So the key is that, again, remember, we can't control people and we can't control the actual situations, whether what has happened in the past, what is happening now, what will happen in the future. All we can control is what you, your team, and your business does together to now create that trust. That's all you can do. So we have to adapt to what is, and we have to know that it's only through clarity that when we have clarity and we can be consistent, we can connect better with our audience. So this is like truly now aligning to what's really important to them. And what is, there could be something that if their economic situation were better, what would that look like? What would they envision they would be doing right now by asking the right questions? So what I'd like to hear from some of you, when it comes to building that connection, from what we've talked about so far, now we're going to get into the weeds on things. What is working for you right now with establishing that connection and trust? What do you see as working, and what can be better? Let's just see if we could all connect together and find some common ground with that here in the chat box. See if we see anything. So what is working right now to build that connection and trust that you see is working, and what hasn't worked, or what could be better? What would that look like? You see somebody typing, so I'll wait for them to put their comment in. So I see social media updates through other professionals. Okay, great. So social media is also a great way to connect, as long as you know that your audience is using those platforms. Is that Facebook? Is it Instagram? Is it LinkedIn? Is it TikTok, YouTube, any combination thereof? Great. And then also updates through other professionals. Yeah, that can be other people in the trades. That can be other general contractors, if you're working with them, that type of thing. Somebody said LinkedIn and YouTube is for them. Great. So I get an idea of what your audience would look like there. Good. Excellent. Because a lot of times when we start getting into really defining our audience, this is where this is all going to make sense. Great. Thank you for sharing. So with that being said, I want you to kind of think about that trust formula, like to start to, let that seed plant for a minute about clarity, consistency, and connection. Because again, if we're not clear on what our audience is really looking for, what's important to them, what is the challenge that they have that can be better, what are the results they seek and don't have, and then if we're not consistent connecting with them there across these platforms, just like the gentleman said, social media like LinkedIn and YouTube, then because of that lack of consistency, we're not really truly connecting. It's kind of like hit or miss. But if we're now connecting, it's subconsciously planting seeds. And that's what's building that connection, even before they maybe have a conversation with you. You've even gotten them on the phone, or they've gone to your website to check out more information. So this is going to be really important. So let's take a look at when we can really establish that trust formula. Now we got to really understand our audience. So you got to know your audience. So what I'd like you to kind of think about, what do you do right now that this could be resources or anything that you use to better know your audience and what is important to them when it comes to how they want to live, what kind of house they want to, reside in and settle down in, what kind of experiences do they want to have in that house, or if it's something, if you're building, something else, what would that look like? Let's see if we can get some feedback from the audience to see if we truly, really know our audience. Because as the gentleman said earlier, knowing your audience is the first step. Because without doing that, I don't care what lead gen, what social media posting you're doing, any marketing or sales, it won't be as effective if we don't really know what our audience is and what the challenges that could be better and what are the results they seek to have. Somebody says, we recently worked with our realtors to come up with a buyer persona. Once we established that, I used geo-targeting combined with demographics to try and reach that correct audience. Excellent, great. So coming up with an avatar in this case. What is that avatar? Maybe for some of you, that might be someone that, let's say, if it's a luxury home and they want to live in a luxury home, they want it to be maybe environmentally friendly. Everyone might have different things that they're interested in and for different reasons that might be important to them. So would it be safe to say that maybe even though you're not going to know this about everyone that you're serving, that would be impossible. But what if we had a better understanding of that buyer persona, right down to their personality type? Maybe the generational type. Maybe they're a younger Gen X. Maybe they're an older to mid-level millennial. Maybe they're an older Gen Z. And maybe now they're at different positions in their life in terms of what they're looking for when it comes to living a certain way and the type of house they want to live in. Do you think, and what about cultural and ethnic types where English is not their first language? Maybe the culture is slightly different from what we are used to. Do you think that could have an impact on how we leverage our messaging? I see somebody's typed in something, but a lot of stuff in there. Let's see here. Every boomer that I've talked to has the same question. What is my next step? Moving is hard work, but a parade of homes and tours, I see mostly boomers. Latinos are locked out by pricing. Yeah, a lot of times. Great observation there. So that's great data to really reflect too, having that data, because this is going to help you better understand your audience. And then as your audience evolves over time, how you can make these shifts and then to reestablish when we get into the messaging. But what's important is we got to better understand our audience, right down to personality types. So some of our people that we may be serving could be, let's say they run a business just like you do. Maybe perhaps they're they have a high ranking position in a corporation. Now, a lot of times those individuals are going to be results driven, meaning that they're called what we call a driver on a personality level. And drivers like results. Spare me the details. Now, with that being said, if you are too detailed with your messaging and you don't get to the point, you've lost a driver. Now, we're going to get more into that. Now, you also could get an audience where maybe perhaps they're more conservative. Maybe they're in positions where maybe you're serving a community or an area where it's heavily tech focused. That could be IT. That could be in other conservative industries where there's a lot of maybe perhaps engineers and project manager types. I'm not saying that's going to be the case for every community, but let's just say that can make up a lot of the people you serve. Well, they're very analytical in their thinking. And analytical people embrace detail. Without the detail, they're not going to believe the next step that you're sharing with them that will get their buy-in to move forward. So if your messaging isn't following a sequence in an analytical way for them to process with certain information that they can relate to, that they can say, I believe that, and I know that to be true, more likely you're not connecting with them and you're missing the boat. Now, those are task-oriented people. Now, if you get to the people-centric people who value who it impacts. They want to create memorable family experiences. That's more important than other things that could be important to a task-oriented person. They want to know that it impacts maybe using environmentally friendly, like lighting and maybe insulation and whatever else that may be used. Those could be very important for whatever reasons are important to them. But if we don't know that and just assume and speculate that that type of person is the same as the D, the driver, well, we could be missing the boat here. And that's going to be, in this case, when we're looking at amicable people and then also expressive people. Expressive people, they're usually not decision makers. They don't like to make decisions. They don't like to take calculated risks. They pretty much play it safe. They're very systematic in their way of processing information. So again, if we push too hard, or we get, we're kind of aggressive with our messaging, guess what? You're not connecting with them. Now, we're going to go into all of this stuff here a little more in length, so you get a better idea of personality types, generational types, cultural types, how that can play a role in your messaging, and eventually how that'll impact your marketing, sales, building trust, having clarity, and now connecting at a higher level. So let's take a look at what that looks like. So this is what we call the DISC profile. Anybody familiar with DISC? I mean, there's a lot of personality assessments out there. And the only reason why I took this one is just because it's very common for most people. They probably at one point or another in their career had a DISC profile done, especially if you work for somebody. Doesn't mean you have, but I only do it just so that because I can illustrate a point. The other personality assessments are very similar. They just have different terminology. Is anybody familiar with DISC? Yes, it's an intellectualized horoscope. Yeah, it can be, and again, there's nothing like that. If you are a D or an I, or because you could be a series of 2 or 3 of them, but you always lead with one. It doesn't mean it defines exactly who you are. It just gives an indication. But just to give just a quick summary, what I shared before, if we are serving, depending upon what communities or what part of the country we're in, or that demographic of, if these people are more task oriented, maybe we have a lot of business owners, people that make swift decisions, they want results. Ds are like that. Now, here's the thing about a D. A D has a very low tolerance for detail. What's interesting to them is, what can we do to make my challenge better to get the results I seek? Plain and simple. They're going to do it with or without you. That's what D's do. They know what they want, and they will find a way to make it happen with or without you. So that's going to be key. Now, also on that left side of that quadrant here is compliant or conscientious. And conscientious, as I mentioned, these are usually people that are more conservative. They tend to be more analytical. A lot of times these are like people that could be in the tech industry. They could be in conservative industries like aerospace or manufacturing, engineering, project manager types. And they process things in a sequence of steps. That's how they do it. They're more detailed. So if we're less detailed with a compliant person, guess what? You're not connecting with them. You're not building that trust. And oftentimes that we got to substantiate that, not with just speculation or, it could be true. No, that I can support what we're sharing with actual facts, figures, and so on. Now, does this mean you have to become an expert in this? No, but by understanding this, even to this level, can give you the upper hand, and how, by knowing your audience better, is going to help you with the messaging, which we're going to show you how you can alter and change that to reflect that when you have this information. Now, real quick, on the right side is what we call our people-centric side. Just to let you know, influential and dominant, the boxes, they are usually leadership positions, people that usually take the lead. The difference, again, one is task-oriented, one is people-centric. And influential people tend to be like, people that could be in the HR profession. They could be sometimes lawyers. They could be in nonprofits. They could be in sales. It doesn't mean that everybody who's a lawyer or sales is going to be an I. No, I know lawyers and salespeople who are D's and some are C's, believe it or not. But nonetheless, when we can have a better understanding, this will impact this. So as you mentioned, remember I mentioned dominant people on the DISC profile like what questions? Compliant people like how questions. How can we make this challenge better to get these results? Influential people, they care about results too, what's important to them, but they want to know who it impacts. Who does that impact? Their spouse, partner, their family, their neighborhood, their community, whatever. That's important to them. Who? They identify with who questions. And then finally, steadiness or steady. As I mentioned, these are people who are very systematic in their approach. They don't like to make decisions. They don't like to take calculated risks. They're very, they just a lot of times will stay with what they know unless we're able to build rapport and trust over time to get them to now perhaps change and make a decision. And that also they identify with why questions more. So how are those, those like what, how, who, why, how is that going to be important when it comes to the messaging? Well, you're going to find out shortly. And I'm going to share some examples with you here shortly when we do that. But just a quick thing on generational types. Somebody said here, every boomer that I talk to has the same question. What is my next step? Moving is hard work. But at Parade of Homes and Tours, I see mostly boomers. Yes. So again, baby boomers, grew up during a time where children were to be seen and not heard. Baby boomers didn't have access to the information growing up like the younger generations do. So they were used to, more detail. You could be more detailed on average with the baby boomer. Okay. They're more loyal, more self-driven. Now, if you look at the Gen X, that's my generation. I'm an older Gen X, and we're very similar to baby boomers, except we're not as private. We're a little more semi-private. But with that being said, we, have a tendency of knowing that we want to be heard on some level, just not to the point like a millennial, but we're kind of in between. So by understanding what's important to us and what we're looking for is something that subconsciously would resonate with the Gen X. Whereas a baby boomer, sometimes they like to have something they desire, but they're more tolerant to take what is only available, if that is the case. I'm not saying that's for everybody. Now, when millennials came around, it changed everything, right? Two parents were working for the most part. They were raised by a nanny or in a daycare. They had technology and video games, and their attention span began to go down compared to Gen X and baby boomers. So them identifying with a marketing message or a conversation or reading something was going to be less than, say, the older generations. And with that being said, they were more public, meaning this is where, again, social media hadn't come out yet, but there was other areas where that was starting to be exploited during that time in other ways. But nonetheless, that generation was completely different from the Gen X and baby boomer, and even more so with the Gen Z, the generation that grew up with all this technology that we have today, communicating over phones and not face to face, and their attention span being even more limited or less than the millennials. So how we structure our messages is completely different. I'll give you guys a perfect situation. This is not in your industry, by the way, but it was a moving company, and they had started in 1994. And I remember when they came to me, I looked at their website, I looked at their marketing collateral, I looked at their social media profiles. And at the time, their sales had been stagnant for 14 years. They were a regional moving company competing with U-Haul and Penske, even though those were national, global moving companies. And they weren't seeing an uptick in their sales. And they tried different lead gen sources, they tried different SEO sources, and still they weren't seeing a movement like they thought. So they thought it was just that the lead gen wasn't working, the SEO wasn't working. Here was the ideal case where they didn't understand their audience. They assumed See, when I looked at their messaging, I asked them, when was the last time you updated this message on your website? He goes, well, it hasn't been updated. The website's been updated, of course, but we haven't updated the message, and it's always been the same. I said, when did you start again? 1994. And I said, oh, interesting. I said, who's your target audience? We target people between the ages of 23 or sometimes 24 to 35. We typically find people that are moving into their first residence or moving into a starter home, or they're moving from a starter home into their next level home. I said, okay. I said, I'm your audience. And he looked at me, he said, what are you talking about? You got to be in your 50s. I said, yeah, but I'm your audience. And he said, no, I remember I said, I target people between the ages of 23, 24 to 35. I said, your message, the way it's set up without you knowing it, is targeting a Gen X. He didn't even realize that. We went in, we did some more research on their audience, broke it down more, and we were able to determine that he had too much detail, a little bit more too much detail. We were now able to make it more specific, clear, and concise, straight to the point, where it spoke like a checklist, not like a paragraph. And within 3 to 6 months, he saw an uptick in his lead gen and SEO in terms of converting and closing more business. The messaging was off. And it was a generational example. Generational example right there. So I'm going to go more into that when we get into the messaging. But what about cultural and ethnic types? Somebody mentioned Latino. Would it be safe to say that, I know there's Latinos that speak English. My wife is Latino. She's Venezuelan. She speaks English. But does that mean if I communicate a message to her, that she's going to fully understand what that means? I could assume so, but that's not the case. Because somebody where English is not their first language, they might be processing that message in their language before they translate it into English for themselves. And is there a difference in words and statements that can mean more than one or two different things in English? Yes. Is that the same in Spanish? No. You can see where there could be a disconnect. And the thing about Latinos is they value family. They value trust. They're very difficult to convince that they can trust you unless that you connect at that type of level. That's part of their culture. I know this because I live with a Latino. I'm around my wife and her family. So with that being said, we got to take that into consideration. If that is a community, the people that we serve in there, that would be a thing here. So with that being said, that we got to take that into consideration, because if we try to be everything for everyone, we're never going to connect at a deeper level. We're not going to build that trust. And it doesn't mean everybody you serve is going to have the same cultural, ethnic background, the same personality, no. But if we create that persona that somebody said, we can more likely say that if 60% of our audience or 70% of our audience tend to fall here, then that's where our marketing and our PR should be geared towards. Doesn't mean we can't serve other people, sure. And we can't have different messaging for everything with our marketing unless we have data that to support that we can do that. Sure, we can still have different messaging for different subsets of our target audience. But if we don't have that information knowing our audience, we're not going to know. So what do you think is a great way to get some quality information about knowing your audience today in the world we live in today? Where do you think we can get that information? Someone says there's always dialogue that doesn't translate, or words we take for granted means, yes, true. Where do you think we could find information now about our audience better than we've had in the past? Where do you think we can get that information? We can use AI technology, Perplexity Pro. I use Perplexity Pro for a lot of my macro research on audiences that I serve. And by doing so, it's substantiated by actual factual information that has footnotes where the source came from. So it's not hearsay or assumption, or I think it could be that way. It's actually information that has been documented, backed up, proven to a certain degree. Obviously, I'm not going to say always 100%, but nonetheless, that can give you some indication about insights of what's going on with that audience that you've done. And you don't have to go out and do a full-blown market study. You could go out and talk to a certain amount of people that could be, potential customers or prospects. Get information from them. A lot of people don't like to do surveys anymore. It's too time consuming unless you give them an incentive. But actually, maybe just talking to them, just asking them a few high profile questions to get this information. Can you explain exactly how you use Perplexity? Yes. So how I do it is I prompt it. I prompt it in terms of, if I know, first I want to find out maybe a little bit about what could be the amount of people living in a certain area that I serve. And once I'm able to find that, I can prompt that. Then I can prompt what is the likelihood that the people in this demographic, might be some of the common challenges that they have when it comes to buying a home or updating a home or moving or whatever that might look like. You gotta know how to prompt it correctly. Now, I won't have time to go over the prompts. It's too time consuming, and I'd have to have another session like this to even just talk about that for an hour, because there's a lot to share there. But how you prompt it is what it will give you the information that you're looking for. Now, you don't use that verbatim. You use it as a basis to build a foundation, as a benchmark. Now, if I go out and start talking to people and getting it from the horse's mouth, I can now match it and align with what came back from Perplexity Pro and you can use ChatGPT, like a paid version. I wouldn't use the free version for that. And now you can start to see, is there an alignment with this information? Oh, somebody says an example. Okay. So in this case, like if I go out and I say that I want to target the Latino community in Lubbock, Texas, and let's say that I'm building homes in Lubbock, Texas, would it be safe to say that there could be a Hispanic people living in Lubbock, Texas? Yes. Now, if I got back some data to support that there is an ample amount of people that live in Lubbock, Texas, that could be my target audience. I have somebody on my staff that speaks Spanish that could help me. Could there be a market there? Yeah. So you could be using to establish, is there a market that I can build from? So that would be like an example. And there could be a lot of different things. So you gotta get your research and data to support, is there an audience that has this challenge, has these results that I could help fulfill? Not that you can fulfill all of it, but I could help fulfill some of it or a good part of it that's going to build that connection and trust with them. And that's where you can use that, and then now go out and start talking to people and getting this information to substantiate that. Are they in alignment? And if so, these are the things that could be used now to start modifying and coming up or revamping your messaging. All right. So let's take a look at, because we got a lot to cover. So here's an example of tailoring for audience types. So if you look at a luxury home developer, this would be a task-oriented person. Remember, we talked about D's and C's. This is just another personality way of looking at it, driver and analytical. Same thing as a dominant and a conscientious. So here's a scenario. We design and deliver precision-built luxury homes that elevate your status and maximize property ROI. See, they're task-oriented. They want things that are going to generate results. Now, if I had that message to a people-centric type of personality, if that made up a bulk of my buyer persona, that would not connect with them. Your marketing would not see the results in the numbers on your lead gen and SEO because of that. I guarantee that, for the most part. Now, scenario two, all of you get a copy of these slides, by the way. So I don't feel like you got to memorize all this. But if you have the other side, the amiable, expressive, these are the influencer and the steady, the people-centric. We help families create a home that tells their story. built with integrity, care, and craftsmanship that lasts generations. See, that who it impacts. It impacts their family, their community, their neighborhood, the legacy, the generations to come. These are very important. We don't realize how important this connects subconsciously to what is important to them, or a challenge that could be better for them, a result they seek. Now, again, this isn't just the message in itself. This is just a part of it. But nonetheless, I'm going to show you how this all shapes up. So if we're now going to know our audience and take that data and really start to use it better, one thing we got to understand about a high engaging value proposition is we got to know who we serve. What is the challenge you solve? What are the results that you generate from them that makes you a trusted source? So it's not about you. It's not about we're going to help you do this, this, and this, and this is how we do it, blah, blah, blah. No, it's got to be in third party. It's about them. Why are you compelling to them in terms of that they know that you serve them, whether if it's their community, their culture, maybe there's a certain type of person and they can relate to that, and that you understand their challenge. You understand what they're looking to generate in terms of results. That's what we call a trusted advisor, a trusted source. So it's very important that we have to take that in consideration. Let's take a look at how that's going to shape up now. So we got to enter the conversation in the buyer's mind. Again, not from you, not what you do, but what is important to them. People buy on emotion for the most part. There are some task-oriented people that buy on logic, then emotion. It flip-flops. But overall, most people are buying on emotion. And that's when the challenge that they have is great enough that they decide to do something, and the results or the solution they seek is great enough for them to take action. That means that not everybody is going to buy from you, not at the same time. This is why your messaging has to be consistent and cohesive across all the touch points that your buyer persona interacts with. It could be your website. In the upper fold is the first thing they see in the upper fold of their website. I know for me, I target a lot of business owners, and a lot of my business owners that make up the bulk of the people I do work with, that doesn't mean everyone I work with the same way, are Ds, drivers, or dominant. They desire results. So when you look at my website at sustainablesuccess.net, the first thing they see is, what if your business metrics unfolded in a narrative of continuous growth in profit and revenue? Question mark. I interrupt their thinking. A narrative of compounding revenue and profit fostered through stronger team leadership dynamics and creating a valuable customer experience. Now I engage them with what they have to do to generate more profit and more. That's what a D want. That's what they want. They want to know, what do I have to do? That's why I open with the what. See, that's more likely now that they're going to stay on my website and go down and now see how I can help them. Maybe book a call with me. But you'd be shocked that most websites, the first thing they see is what you do, how long you've been doing business, how you could help them, and they're gone. Especially with the younger generation, gone. Their attention span is going to be limited. We gotta really focus on these messages if we're going to engage them and keep their attention. So let's take a look at what that looks like real quick. So this is the conversion retention equation. It's what we call an interrupt statement. This would be like an example on a website or email marketing, or could be even in your social media profiles, in your posts. Now, it doesn't mean you're going to be using this all verbatim. It's going to be, mixed up, but it's still, talking to the same area. So it's got to be a headline that states their challenge that can be better. Remember, I said mine. What if your business metrics unfolded a narrative of continuous growth in revenue and profit? Then I engage them with the type of results they could have if they take action. A sub-headline promising the solution that they desire and don't have. And then you educate them. You don't tell them to book a call with you, or you just educate them. Give them a video to look at. Discover in this video how to make your challenge better to get these results. And then the offer is simply put your name and email, and I'll send you the information. You're not selling them. You're helping them to sell themselves to you. You're influencing them. This is a great way with your marketing and PR to influence, not persuade and convince. So here's some examples of engagement value proposition messages. We help our audience turn their challenge to achieving through a compelling approach. So that, again, that's not the actual message. That's just to illustrate the concept. So it's saying, here's our audience taking this challenge to make it better to get these results. And here's some examples. And I'm going to show you a bunch of other ones, how this can come together. We help busy professionals build modern homes that reflect their lifestyle on time, on budget, and beyond expectations. We help developers create profitable, sustainable communities through intelligent design and efficient project execution. Now, again, that could be more to a C, like a task-oriented person, the bottom one, and the more up on here, more people-centric. So you can see that there's differences. Here's an example of a full-blown value proposition message. This can be right on a website, by the way. What if developers could make project delays, cost overruns, and low community engagement better to achieve blah, 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 blah? That's going to interrupt their thinking. Now they may read the engage statement. So again, if I'm a D, possibly a C, task-oriented person, that's who makes up your buyer persona more of, they might more likely identify with something like that. And then I'm going to educate them. It could be a video, it could be a PDF, a download, and all they have to do is put their name and email, because now I'm going to put them into my email list, and I'm going to cultivate that trust by dripping similar content of value that's playing on their subconscious mind to now say yes, possibly now, deciding to do that project and working with us to do it. This would be an example. Here's another example. This is for an analytical. By the way, this was for a driver. This was results oriented. This was an analytical. See how I open up with the how? Whereas this one was a what. What for drivers, how for analytical. If our data and our research comes back to support that, that makes up the bulk of our audience. Well, there you go. Amiable. Ooh, they want to know who it impacts. So very similar. And these types of messages work when time has been put into to reflect this and really align with that challenge, to those results. That's what's going to build that trust and connection. It provides clarity to who they are, what their challenge is, and how you can help them get those results. And here is like the expressive people that have a hard time making decisions. They don't want to, but if you can identify with why, that might connect with them better. And again, this can be layered in over other touch points like email marketing, social media. So you come up with a strategy with using, similar messaging to this, adding stories that will relate to where they are to build that connection, to build that trust. People will never pull the trigger unless there's enough rapport and trust built where now they're giving you permission to talk further and how you can, what you can do to help them, how you can help them, who you can help as a result for that, and why you could help them do this, and this, depending upon who it is. So the whole idea is you got to align these touch points across all these platforms. From your website for your upper fold, that means on your mobile version of your website, that's going to be the first thing that they see on your website. Your email, email marketing, your e-newsletters, your social media posts, networking, when you're actually networking or you're talking to alliance partners, because this could go right to your alliance partners too. This applies to your alliance partners based on personality, generational, culture, same thing. So you can have different messages for these different situations, different types of audiences that you serve, and even down to your alliance partners. You want more people to refer you and keep you top of mind. Same concept works with them. Or just to kind of look at the buyer's journey again, clarity reduces touch points. When you can help them to get clear on what they're looking to do and make something better, more likely they're going to say yes. Trust accelerates the decisions, plain and simple. People are not going to make decisions if not enough trust is built. Now, they might not even trust themselves. So you're helping them to do that, especially when it comes down to price. I've seen this a lot. I've worked with commercial construction companies when they do go out on bids, and it's not about price. It's a lot of times it's about the trust that they know, even if you're slightly the higher bidder, they trust that you're going to show up, and yet your action is going to support what you said to generate the results they seek and save them money on the back end rather than costing them more money on the back end if you're the lower price. Price is always going to be the most common objection. That just means that they're not sure of you yet. Not enough rapport and trust has been built. I'm not saying that price isn't important. It is. Don't get me wrong, no matter what you do. But nonetheless, if you're more likely to build on values, on the clarity, and what's important to them, you'll be shocked that sometimes that can override price issue. Not in every case, but definitely a lot more. So here's an example of a website before and after. You typically see this. We're a family-owned builder with 25 years of experience in high-quality homes. I'm not saying, I've seen sometimes, where I've seen that on websites. Now versus this one. Again, take into account knowing our audience. So we got to streamline the sales process. Guide, don't push. You want to educate. Educating is sharing. You're empowering them to draw their own conclusion. Allow them now to process it. Why is this important to them? What is important to them? How is this important to? Who is this important to? Again, based upon we talked about the personalities. And these are the things that are going to reduce the number of touch points, hopefully now to get them to say yes to work with you. Now, the same thing can be done with alliance partners, right? With architects. Architects tend to be very C-oriented, very conscientious, very analytical. So how we direct messages to an architect may be very different than an interior designer. Definitely different than a real estate agent, and then perhaps suppliers. Now, suppliers, again, this is where Perplexity Pro or ChatGPT, the paid version, can be really helpful in giving you more insights of how they process information and how they go about building trust and rapport, and right down to personality types. That doesn't mean all these people are going to fall under that. We have found that education specifically with high performance Zier homes was a key factor. Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. But again, we want to get clear on our alliance partners too. So if we want to build a referral culture, we got to turn satisfied clients into a marketing machine. And the only way we're going to do that is better knowing them, and not just like that example I gave to you about the moving company where they knew their audience back in 1994, but somewhere along the way, they lost track of them and didn't keep up on who their audience was. There was no coincidence why their sales and marketing and everything else stalled. So it's constantly being up to speed, knowing your audience. And sometimes those changes can happen in a few years. Not 5 years, 10 years. It can sometimes be sooner. But the more we can be on top of it, the better we can revamp and revise our messaging. So these are some case studies. I know I don't have much more time, and these are going to be more for you to kind of take a look at. I only got a few more slides here. But this is a builder in St. Louis that used this messaging overhaul that helped them across all the different touch points where they saw, their challenge was that, again, they weren't connecting to their luxury clientele. They definitely made a shift, better understanding their audience in terms of now revamping all the touch points of where their audience would be. And then within 6 months after their rebrand with this information and changes, they saw a shift in their numbers. You all get a copy of that. So the payoff, when trust drives your marketing, well, guess what? When you have trust, more likely people are going to refer you. People are going to think of you when the time comes when they're going to move forward with that project, or they're going to move ahead and build the home of their dreams, whatever. It's not about chasing. It's about influencing. It's about empowering them to be part of their experience to move forward. So the next thing, just a quick call of action. Are you ready to build your trust blueprint? What are you going to do? So what I'd like to hear before we conclude, and I'll just answer a few questions if you like. What's one thing that stood out for you in this short presentation on this particular area with value proposition messaging, knowing your audience to position that messaging, and how you can now use that to revamp your marketing, sales, and PR process? What stood out for you? Matching messaging to target audience. Yes. No specific audience in detail. Great. Excellent. Yeah, put the effort up front with the knowing your audience, with the research, with the data, with the information. That's gonna save you a lot of time and money and make your lead gen and SEO process much better. Excellent. So everybody, this is just a QR code for your feedback, which helps me to help you better on a future presentation. Your feedback helps me to alter my content to help better so I encourage you, if you could do that, wonderful. No obligation, of course, but that would be completely helpful. I'll just leave that up here for a second or two here if you want to grab that with your phones. Somebody says geofencing.
Yep. Yeah, that was my question, Christopher.
Okay.
I think we hear a lot of folks, maybe while people are scanning the QR code, hear a lot of our EBA builders that are using geofencing. I'm just wondering, for capturing target audiences within a development, within a geography, how have you seen that deployed well? Alex says they're using it as well, so that's great.
Absolutely. Anybody have any questions? This is just my contact information as well. That's my speaker site, ChristopherSalem.com, and then my business site. And again, I want to thank Aaron and Nancy for the opportunity to serve all of you here. And thank you for your participation.
Yeah, Alex, I mean, I get so excited hearing you speak, and I think about it for EBA, what we can do better, I think, for all of our builders. And I know we talked coming on, but we just love to have you back in person.
Absolutely.
At the EBA Summit in 2026, because you cannot hear this stuff enough times. And I do think there's a piece of this. You talked a little bit about, I believe it's called perplexity. And I think
I could go more into prompts, absolutely, to help there.
Yeah,
absolutely.
But it's just, there's this tool out there, called AI. And I feel like it's really coming to the fore. How do we use that? How do we analyze our markets? How do we find prospective customers with it? I think that's a big question that I have. So,
absolutely. Anyway, yeah, I'd be happy to share that in a future presentation.
Great. Let's set something up on that. Christopher, thank you as always. Thank you to our audience for attending today. We hope to see everyone soon. Is there any more questions that came in? Alex is typing. Let's see what else Alex has. Nope, that's it.
Yeah, well, definitely, I'm happy to do that. I got plenty to share on prompting. Prompting is the secret sauce, and there is a strategy to do that. A lot of people are not familiar with, and it's something that can be learned. So that's a good thing.
Yeah. Nancy, thoughts, or did you have anything to add?
Yeah, no, great stuff. It was really good.
Right.
It looks like we got somebody still typing something, so.
Type faster. Come on.
Maybe not. Maybe not.
Okay. All right, perfect, everyone. Well, you can follow up with Chris at ChristopherSalem.com if you have any more questions and want to engage directly with his team. Chris, thank you again so very much.
Thanks to both of you.
Thanks, Chris.
All right, take care.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.